This week on Barbell Shrugged, we talk about strength versus endurance and how they might benefit each other. Oh, we ready, Chris? We filming? We recording?
I was saying, like,
I realized there was so much drama during the last episode.
it'd be like if you said, if you're going to lift weights, you might want to eat protein. And you're like, like what did I say? Stone cold Bledsoe stare of 1,000 ages. Melts your soul.
Sorry, man. I'll try not to do that this week.
Try not to, you fucker.
Don't do it to David.
No.
Yeah, I'd freak out.
He's like,
He's like,
you make him nervous.
Shit.
All right, guys. Welcome to Barbell Shrugged. I'm Mike Bledsoe, here with Doug Larson, Chris Moore, and now David Gross. David's one of our coaches at Faction. We invited him to come join on the discussion. We'll see. We'll see how he does. I think he'll be okay.
Yeah, I think last time I was here, I was out on the back porch for our was it the pool party?
Yeah, the podcast that never got posted.
The unaired episode.
Supposedly, CTP
Our
was doing.
cameraman was drunk.
Yeah,
you might have been sober,
And
but
accosting
we
all the
weren't.
guests.
it was CTP. Yeah, CTP earned some new nicknames that day, so he had to delete that. I'm gonna promote a couple things real quick. First off, we do offer remote coaching on our website. Ooh, we got a buzz. We got remote coaching.
There you go.
Good.
Right.
Offered by Matt Baird, and then also myself. We might have some other coaches. It kind of depends on if it looks like we're doing a lot of work, then they probably won't want to do it.
And what all does that involve?
The remote coaching, you're going to get individualized programming. So you'll get individualized programming, some nutrition, consultations. You'll get monthly phone consultations. They're 30 minutes. I'm trying to remember everything that you do, but
You get a free Barbell Shrugged t-shirt?
no, not yet. We're not there yet. You will get,
We should have some t-shirts soon, though.
yeah, so like on a monthly basis, you're going to be given a program every month by the coach. You're going to have some interaction. It's going to be programmed specifically to fit your needs and your goals. You'll get, when someone signs up, they get things like some of our seminars. So the first thing you do is we'll send you maximum mobility. That way you can test yourself, figure out where you might have some mobility restrictions so we don't end up programming badly for you. So, and then also so we can adjust the training as necessary. It's pretty much the same thing. I just said it twice, different ways. It doesn't matter.
That's fine. That's fine.
good. Yeah, so you'll get.
So long story short, this sounds like a good deal.
Yeah, you should probably do it if you have goals. So
Only if you have goals.
only if you have
though.
goals. Yeah, most people who end up doing something like this, they have a competition they're preparing for. You know, they want to go to the games one day or something like that.
So if you're kind of beyond blog programming and you don't want to just follow like a random website, or you don't have a coach right now, then maybe you could look into this.
Yeah, go to check out.
Good point.
Matt Baird is one of the guys that's coaching. He does an excellent job, and if you want to see him talk, he's on episode 36, and we'll be bringing him back again, hopefully pretty soon, so we can talk more about that.
He's
but
insane.
yeah, Matt's insane, but he knows what he's talking
In a
about.
good way.
Yeah.
If you don't get motivated to train harder by working with that guy, then you have no soul, no heart, no emotion.
Yeah, that guy is.
You're void. You're a shell of a human being.
Yeah, he
You'll
fires
probably
me
make
up.
He's a passionate
If you
guy.
work
for
out,
sure.
and if you work with that guy, just talk to him once a week or whatever, you're gonna feel much better about life.
Yeah,
He's a good guy to have around.
he always makes me want to train hard. That's for sure. The other thing I want to tell you guys you should do is go to fitter.tv, FITR.tv, sign up for the newsletter so we can inform you of all the new stuff that we do all the time. You'll get the updates about when we have new podcasts, technique wads.
All the updates.
all
many,
the updates.
So many quality
Super
updates.
high quality.
You will feel as if your time had been well spent.
All right, so today's topic is strength versus endurance. We get a lot of questions where people are asking, should I, take some time off from my endurance training or cardio and really focus on getting stronger? What's the quickest route there? I think I did a.
This is the big CrossFit question, right? The balance between.
Oh yeah.
The major domains of, I want to be really strong, but I also want to be able to do all the other stuff. So
I find,
how do I maintain a balance? That's a fundamental question in CrossFit, isn't it?
Yeah, I find a lot of people, they'll be doing CrossFit, they'll be doing CrossFit.com, or they'll be doing some type of programming where they're doing strength training a couple days a week, and then they're doing a lot of conditioning 3 days a week, and then they always hit that point where they're not, the strength gains like slow down considerably.
Because why? Why?
There's a few different reasons.
Okay, you're going to talk about it?
Yeah.
Trying to do to him what he did to you last week?
No, I'm just like, this is like your elementary school teacher. And 2 + 2 is? Why? Show your work.
4.
Show your work.
I was going to say.
How much work to show?
Because these things are competing the demands, right?
That's right. You've only.
Fundamentally different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean.
They are fucking yin and yang. Let's blow your mind up with that.
Yin and yang. Strength and conditioning. Yeah, so I think a lot of people, they just don't spend enough time on strength training. And then a lot of times people do strength or conditioning, and they don't, you could spend, what you probably should do is at the beginning of each day is do a little bit of strength training and then your conditioning. And I think people also on the endurance side of things, they probably spend too much of their volume training in that domain when they could be committing more of that to strength. We're going to talk more about that as the show goes on, about why. Getting stronger is probably a better idea, especially for newer athletes.
Mm-hmm.
Especially if you have not reached that requisite amount of strength.
Yeah, we see that all the time. People come to the gym, and at first they want to just, they're not an athlete. They just want to kind of get back in shape. They've never done any CrossFit type training before, and initially they just want a Metcon all the time. They just want their heart rate to be up and to feel like they're sweating and whatnot. And then they stop winning at Metcons, or they may have never started. They may have never actually even won at all, but they stop improving on their Metcons, and they think the answer still is just to Metcon harder and do more Metcons. And then eventually they realize that they're just not strong enough. And until they gain strength, they're not going to improve their Metcon times, because the Metconing, even though it's heart rate is really high, and they consider it cardio training, it's really not true endurance training in a lot of cases. If you're Metconing for a 12-minute AMRAP, that's not really endurance. If you talk to like the endurance community, they think of endurance as hours upon hours of running marathons and whatnot are
terrible
or low intensity for a long period of time.
No reason to ever do that.
Yeah. And if you're Metconing, it's not really true endurance. So if you want to improve a short duration Metcon, anything less than 20 minutes, then you have to improve your strength first. If you're not front squatting body weight in half, then you're not going to win a CrossFit competition, not a real one. Mm-hmm. That's like a bare minimum.
I had a guy come to me a couple months ago, and he was like, I went to this competition, and I felt like I just need more cardio, but I know the guy doesn't deadlift over 400 pounds. Yeah. I'm like, man, the weights crushed you. I mean, it felt like your cardio sucked because the weights were heavy. Mm-hmm. So
that's the thing with CrossFit, man, is like the lifting is actually getting really high quality.
Like, it is. It's getting heavy.
Like,
getting very heavy.
Pretty soon, if you can't deadlift close to 550 or 600, you really won't be able to win those.
Yeah, you used to be able to get away. You used to be able to get away. I remember, I think it was the 2008 games. They were interviewing some guy. There was this was when it was still out in the on the ranch, yeah. And this was last year. It was on the ranch, and they had a Metcon where it was I can't remember exactly what it was, but had a 315 deadlift for like 21 reps, and they had like farmers carry. It was a really cool event, but they were interviewing some guys, and they were like, "What's your max deadlift?" Mm-hmm. And they had to rep it out, and a lot of not more than one guy was like, "Oh, the most ever deadlift was 325," and then that day they did 21 reps at 315.
That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, so I think what was happening there is they probably hadn't just challenged themselves on a truly heavy deadlift up to that point.
Like that wasn't their real max.
That wasn't their real max. Yeah. So
now it's pretty clear. If you want to be good at CrossFit, you have to be as strong as you can be. Really.
Yeah, that 315 deadlift was like during a conditioning or Metcon was like a big surprise at that in the 2008 games, and now it's like, you better be able to do that unbroken, no problem. and be able to go do 10 more things. That's what's expected. So,
Really, the games only did one true endurance event, and the rest of them were regular CrossFit events. Like they had the one kind of a little triathlon thing they did last year that took everyone 2 hours or whatever. But after that, the other 10 or so events they had were normal, shorter duration type events.
Right. I think a couple reasons that keep them short is one, it's not nearly as entertaining to watch something go on for an hour.
Yeah.
And then logistically, you got to run all those athletes through. It's and I think they're trying to make that pool a little bit smaller. They drop regionals down from 60 individuals to 48 individuals, stuff like that. I think that way they can maybe have a little more freedom there. But yeah, it's not sexy on ESPN to do like a 60-minute WOD for sure. And then I'm brain farting now where I was going with that, but
yeah, the long WODs, even in the games this year, the first WOD, I watched like the first 10 minutes and I was like, oh, this is getting boring.
Yeah.
I picked it.
And
I
you
picked
love
up the
watching
stats.
it.
I know.
that's why it wasn't on
picked up the
ESPN.
stats, yeah. Or the live feed.
Yeah.
The CrossFit games.
Yeah, they put on the live feed, but they weren't going to like show that on ESPN.
Reminds me that I was thinking of the comment about, it's sad that most of our lifters now, our CrossFitters can qualify for the American Open. They can't qualify for a local state track meet. Because that's what's going to entertain people on ESPN. I mean, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, there's a reason like tracks.
I don't want to show up and watch anybody run around the track 20 times. I just don't really care. Like when you watch the Olympics, like in London, the coolest thing was Bolt running 100 meters. Like, doesn't get any cooler than that. And the antithesis of that is watching some asshole run around the track 20 times. It's the most boring thing possible. I'll come back in 45 minutes when this is halfway.
So it's kind of like basketball. I just want to tune in the last 5 minutes.
Yeah, when all the action
That's all I want to do.
Yeah.
And then the other thing too is, it does require a lot of endurance to compete in CrossFit because you're doing multiple WODs a day. You said there's like that one true endurance event that takes a couple hours to finish, but the rest of the events are 5 to 15 minutes long, but it's one after another. You got to recover. So there's that. It's almost a different type of endurance that's required for CrossFit, and to have the capacity to compete over 4 days in under a week. I mean, if all you did was strength train and focus on a lot of short duration stuff, you probably would suffer there. So there's definitely a place for that longer duration stuff. But we're going to talk a little bit about that today and why doing a 60-minute WOD to prepare for 10 6-minute WODs may not be the best way to go. And I think just saying it like that probably
Foreshadowing.
Yeah, make you think. Let's talk about why strength improves endurance. I think a lot of people don't realize that. They feel like, if you get stronger, you get stronger. And if you get more endurance, you get more endurance. But this is something I didn't even think about until I got into school. And it was kind of like, well, I do endurance training for endurance, and I lift weights to get stronger. And it never really occurred to me that being strong was actually going to help my endurance out. And that was a little bit of a paradigm shift for me when I was at Memphis for exercise science, and then I didn't know exactly why, but as time's gone on, it's become much more obvious.
I think people listening to this right now think that what you're saying is an opinion rather than like a researched fact.
Right.
In a lot of cases, where I remember seeing some good research a while back on cross country skiers who. If you want to wear cross-country skiers, have some of the highest VO2 maxes out of almost all athletes. Which here we'll talk a little bit about VO2 max for a second. So your VO2 max is how much oxygen you can take in and effectively use. So you breathe in so much oxygen, you breathe out so much oxygen and carbon dioxide. So all the oxygen.
So far, got it, Doug.
All the oxygen you breathe in isn't necessarily taken into your body and used to create energy, right? Basically, you combine food and oxygen, and that's how you create physical energy in your body. And if you can take in more oxygen, then you can burn calories faster, and you can produce more work quicker and all that. And so doing endurance training tends to improve your VO2 max, but so does weight training. So for cross-country skiers, they tend to have the highest values for their VO2 max for almost all athletes. But when they take these high-level cross-country skiers and they strength train them, they always improve their performance, even independent of improving their endurance or their VO2 max. But they can just move faster, even though their cardio didn't improve or change. They just perform better because they're faster and stronger. And usually, if you're going faster, you're winning races.
Yeah, and VO2 max, that used to be kind of like the gold standard for endurance athletes. You know, they're like, what's your VO2 max? Like, that really mattered. And now they're looking more at what is your anaerobic threshold and, you know, how long can you operate at a percentage of your VO2 max? So your VO2 max may be really high, but say you've got two guys with the same VO2 max, the guy that can operate at a higher percentage of his VO2 max is going to win. Their performance is going to be higher. So, you know, ways to improve that is not like your typical endurance training where you go run for a couple hours. A lot of that's going to be, you know, improving your anaerobic threshold. Is where that kind of comes into play.
Sounds like a great opportunity to talk about how you do that.
He goes, oh, God.
Geez. Yeah. Let's see. I kind of want to get into that. Yeah, strength. Well, let's talk about.
Do you want to have that discussion right now?
I guess.
I mean, you kind of just said it, where your VO2 max is what we just talked about. That's like your potential for how much cardio you can do, which is a very loose way to put that. But your anaerobic threshold is what percentage of your cardio max you can maintain for a long period of time without, you know, kind of tanking or fatiguing. So, you know, if you go for a jog, say you can jog at 8 or 10 miles an hour comfortably for a long period of time, but if you went to like 8.5 or 9 miles an hour, then you would fatigue very quickly and you'd have to stop and walk. Right? There's a speed that you can operate at where you can maintain that speed, but if you go just slightly faster, then, you know, you'll eventually fatigue and have to take a break. Right? So if you can raise your anaerobic threshold, then you can basically operate at a slightly faster speed without you know, falling off that cliff and having to take a break. Right. It's like the easiest non-scientific way I can explain that for what's happening for a workout like in the real world.
Yeah, and usually what anaerobic threshold training looks like is it's interval training. So what you're doing is you're going for a short period of time, and it kind of depends on the individual too. It's gonna, like, the ratios and the amount of time that you can hold a certain power output is gonna change from person to person. But yeah, the idea is that you're gonna push that threshold that you wouldn't be able to hold. Say you do a 5-minute interval, 5 minutes on, 5 minutes off, something like that. That's just an example. You can set them up however you want. But say you do a 5-minute interval. Well, you want to be at the end of the 5 minutes. You want to go all out. So at the end of 5 minutes, you really couldn't have gone on to that 6th minute of training. You know, you put it all out there and you got to a certain level, and then you rest 5 minutes and then you go at it again. And what you do is you're practicing pushing past that point where you wouldn't be able to keep going anymore. And then eventually, I mean, you can use periodization and other things like that to plan out these, you know, like an interval program, so that you can. Most people are going to be fine if they just do like a linear progression on that. Like today I did 5 minutes, you know, next week I'll do 6 minutes, you know, and they'll get pretty far on that. But you also want to like keep it changed up too. You don't want to stick with one type of interval. You want to do like 1 minute intervals, 3 minute intervals, 5 minute intervals, so that you're kind of training different speeds, and you can push a lot harder for 1 minute than for 5.
Mm-hmm.
So
you're doing the intervals for the reason that I just talked about. Like,
right,
you're doing the interval intentionally well above your anaerobic threshold.
Right.
But if you're above your anaerobic threshold, then you're going to fatigue and you're going to have to take a break.
Right.
So you're doing that on purpose, and you're training a pace. You know, if you're training for endurance sports, you're training a pace that's well above your race pace on purpose, so you can get used to operating at a slightly faster pace than you're going to run in your actual race. And then when you actually have a race, then you'll be able to just go a little bit faster than you normally did or normally have in the past, because you're training always at a faster pace.
Yeah.
And then you'll win the race, and you'll get all the money and all the chicks.
Yeah, I mean,
So do your interval training.
the only way to
Marathon runners get all
to
the
get your
babes.
body to adapt,
All of them.
the way you get your body to adapt is just to keep on trying to exceed where you can normally operate at.
CTP, is this where you can play push it to the limit? Push it to the limit. As we have this discussion.
The other thing too
Classic 80s movie song.
is with the intervals. What I like about that is, like, say you do a 10-minute, you do a WOD that's 10 minutes long, and you do go all out. Well, if you could have split that up into maybe you did the same amount of time and you did 5 2-minute intervals instead, you're able to go at a higher rate. You put out more total power by the end of the workout. So doing 5 2-minutes can be more beneficial than doing 1 10-minute WOD or something like that. There's definitely room for both, and there's a time and place for both. But I like to split it up like that 2 or 3 times a week, where you're doing intervals for your conditioning versus just straight metcons. I think there's a great place for metcons too. The traditional, like, do 20 minutes nonstop, this and that. I did a case study on myself for my senior project in school, where I had my VO2 max. I just want to bring this up since you're my VO2 max in CrossFit, but
what is your VO2 max?
I haven't checked it in years.
Yeah. What was it? I've only checked mine like once.
I want to say it was like 47.
No,
it wasn't great.
No, you were in the 50s.
No. Well, I got it up in the 60s.
Oh, okay, sorry.
So what ended up happening is I'd gotten out of the Navy, and I ditched like conditioning altogether. I did no aerobic training, no conditioning, all weightlifting.
Yeah.
For like a year and a half. So I went in and I did VO2 max. And I think I was like 45.
Mm-hmm.
What's the average for, say, the average?
Average untrained is probably like 30s and 40s.
I want to say 35, 40.
Yeah, for average like anaerobic athletes, like football players or soccer players, is usually like in the 50s, maybe into the 60s if you're like doing a very running dependent sport. Like if you're a midfielder in a soccer game, you're running a lot of sprints for hours. So you might have a slightly higher VO2 max compared to a wide receiver who runs sprints, but then has like a decent rest interval and then gets off the field for defense. Like that person's not running quite as much as the midfielder. So 50s and 60s. And then I was talking about the cross country skiers, they get up like in the 80s. I think
there's that one guy,
like
80,
90. 84 is like kind of like
guy.
Pretty sick.
in the 90s. That would be super unusual.
Andy,
but they're probably
talked about a guy they tested in like Sweden that was like
really
90 at one point. I was like,
yeah, I'm not sure what the record is for VO2 max, but 80s or 90s would be super high. Like,
those are
I think about endurance
guys.
athletes. I think about like 60s and 70s, except for cross country skiers and maybe some cyclists.
That's a short little fat kid playing soccer, playing the glorious position of defender. I wonder what my VO2 max was. 25, 27. I could have practically been just sitting in front of the goalie, waiting to defend something, eating like goldfish crackers, just waiting for something to happen. That was probably the definition of my youth sporting experience. But not all soccer players are fit. Let's say that.
well, I go back to VO2 max and get away from the goldfish. But
goldfish crackers, by the way, excellent refueling source of high quality carbohydrate.
Yeah.
Not true.
What I did was I wasn't doing more than maybe 5 reps on anything. I want to say I was like maybe 47 was my VO2 max. And then I did 7 months of CrossFit. And it just so happened, the reason I had this data is because I was a guinea pig for a study. And then I just happened to start doing CrossFit like right after that. And then 7 months later, I was doing a senior project, and then I had access to being able to do the VO2 max again. I did a bunch of different tests, actually. And I also did anaerobic threshold and some other stuff. Or it was a Wingate test, actually. But anyways, my VO2 max got up to like 60. Like it went in a very short period of time. And like a lot of the research will tell you, like, you're not going to increase your VO2 max more than 20%. So, and mine actually exceeded that in like 7 months. And I think, I really don't know why it made that big of a jump. Maybe I was doing a little more running too, and I wasn't doing any running. So quick note on VO2 max is it's very dependent on the activity that you're doing. So putting a swimmer on a treadmill and finding their running VO2 max is not going to be really accurate to find anything out about them. You need to get their VO2 max when they're swimming. Same with cyclists and runners. And so
yeah, we took Nasal, who is a jiu-jitsu world champion,
right,
and has good cardio, can fight and wrestle for days. And we put him on the treadmill for his VO2 max, and he was like 37 or something like that.
Out of shape.
Yeah. He looked bad.
Yeah.
But then if he wants to go box and wrestle, he's world class.
He'll wear your ass out.
Yeah.
Specificity.
Yeah.
Weird specificity.
Crazy.
Weird. Specificity. That's a novel idea. If you want to get good at something, you should do that thing.
That's right.
Yeah. Doing one thing doesn't necessarily make you good at the other thing.
Yeah, and in regard to VO2 Maxes, I didn't do any like traditional conditioning. It was all Metcon stuff. I was still lifting to stay strong. I was still doing the Olympic lifts, and then I just threw in conditioning from CrossFit.com, and I saw really good gains out of that. So I don't know what the takeaway was that, but I just want to mention it.
There you go.
So the point being, you can get more fit and more endurance. Let me put quotation marks, as most people think of it, just by doing these Metcons.
Yeah,
you don't have to go out and run on track like some asshole.
Yeah, I wasn't doing stuff that was taking me longer than 20 minutes. If you're running on a track, you
are an asshole. Let me make that perfectly clear.
Vaughn.
Vaughn's like, wait a minute. It's called me an asshole.
But the short sprints and the short workouts do improve the long run for you. I think like these days it's easy to get caught up in more volume on the Metcon. Say if you want to do like an hour long Metcon, you get super fit. You can only do that for so long.
I think
I think you'll get benefit out of it for a year and a half, depending on who you are, and then you'll kind of phase out after a while.
But isn't the easiest, most effective way of making yourself weaker is doing frequently long, brutal workouts? That's probably not the best thing for being fast or powerful or strong in any way.
It'll definitely make you slower. That's actually the biggest challenge I have with any endurance athletes. And so I take some of those guys and I test their 400-meter run, and it's really, really slow. I mean, these guys run. This is what they compete in, and I give them a 400, and they can't move very fast.
My opinion is that speed is like the sole most primary indicator of your sort of preparedness. Like any time the barbell slows down, for instance,
right?
That's like your first canary chirping at you that something is probably less than ideal. I mean, you can do that effectively on purpose for short duration, but if you steadily get slower and slower and slower, like for instance, if I'm doing a lift and I'm pushing it too much, one of the first things I may notice is that I don't pull the bar or move the weight as fast as I would like, or maybe I'm not even moving myself as fast as I would like. That kind of goes back to Dr. Fry's old research where he had people purposely overtrain. And one of the first things you see go down is not 1RM, it's not, their repetition, strength, whatever. It's that the vertical jump goes to shit really quick. It's like the first indicator that you're doing something less than ideal.
Maybe a little bit of the first indicator of overtraining, or
like
you're overreaching right now. Yeah, maybe not overtraining, but
it's one of the first things to quickly return as you get like a compensation effect or something. But yeah, I mean, my opinion is always that if you want to get back to being really strong, the first thing you need to focus on is getting quick again.
Yeah, well,
like for me in a deadlift,
I think that.
When I'm deadlifting better and better, by my standards, when I can move the weight fast.
If I
can pull 400 pounds like a speed deadlift really quick and make the bar snap at the top, then I know my fitness is back in that particular lift. So it might carry over to other things as well.
I mean, that could be good for coaches who are coaching athletes, and if they start moving slower, it might be time to like back off the volume a little bit.
Yeah, you can do it intentionally.
You
can make people. I mean, sometimes you obviously want to push people too far. I mean, this idea of always being in an optimal state is obviously hokum. You're going to have times a year where you feel like shit, and you should, because you have to sort of push too far in order to get the rebound you want. When you stop pushing too far and you compensate and get better. But it's a really interesting idea to monitor how, like maybe vertical jumps in your guys, your sprint times, or if you're lucky enough to have like a little one of the little Fitcher Done units you can put on a bar and monitor on cleans how fast these guys are moving bars. You can sort of see how well they respond to periods where the training is more intense and less intense.
Sounds like a vertical or a 40-yard might be the easiest way to monitor.
Yeah, cost you nothing, and you know that if your 40-yard times are going down, you're competing in a month. You need to remedy that quickly.
Right.
Your focus needs to be getting fast again.
I know guys that test their athletes, every day when they walk in on their vertical jump just to see how they're feeling. You ask an athlete, how you feeling? People will be like, your good athletes will always say they feel good, and your whiners will always say that, I don't know, I feel kind of meh. Yeah, and then the people in the middle are the people you need to pay attention to, because they'll give you a more honest answer, because they're not always whining or always always motivated. But instead of subjectively asking your athletes how they're feeling, some guys just have them do a vertical jump every single day when they walk in. And, if you're within like 5% of what you're normally jumping, then, it's a normal day. But if you walk in and you normally jump a 30 and you jump like a 25, well, you're fatigued that day.
Assuming you're jumping as high as fast as possible.
Yeah, you jump as high as you can. And then if you come in and you PR your vertical, well, maybe you should, max that day. Because you're already like in a state.
That's an interesting idea of like this auto-regulation training. Like I know of stories of shot putters who they would show up to the gym, they do like a power clean or vertical jump or something. If they didn't feel good, they weren't moving quickly, they would just go home. Like there was like an A, B, and C level workout. A was when everything felt great. You would go in, you would do all your work. If you come in, you feel less than good, you would do some light lifts, maybe some light jumps, and you would shut it down early. And if it was a C level where you came in, you were just felt like shit. No matter how hard you tried, you couldn't warm up, you couldn't jump. And you were honestly feeling that way. You weren't like just slacking it. You were trying to do what you wanted to do, but it's just obvious to you that this was not going to be an optimal day, then you just leave. And I take some discipline to be able to approach training like that because, like I say, if you're not using objective things like measuring a 100% effort vertical jump to know what you should do. If you're saying, well, I feel like shit today, I'm not going to train. Most people would never train.
How you feel does not matter.
Yeah. But if you measure
I don't know how many times I've seen people they're like, I feel like total shit. I hate life. All right, let's lift anyway. And then they PR. It's like,
I can't tell you how many times, like when I was powerlifting, I'd show up to a meet and like the bar and 135 in a squat would be like, they feel like 800 pounds. And then I'd go into obsessive, like, oh shit, I'm going to bomb out. My friends and family will judge me accordingly. My life will end. Of course it doesn't. But still, I mean, but those workouts, those sessions, those meets where you feel like shit can be some of the best things. Like, I experienced that most recently when last year I did all this really frequent squatting. I made my last big push in the squat, really. And so I got to where I would have 3 main squatting days and 2 assistant squatting days. And after a while of that, you get to where you're like, my knees don't really feel like they're working really. I don't really want to put the bar on my back. I'm feeling pretty depressed. But the funny thing is, feeling that way keeps you calm. You warm up. By the time you get to 300-400 pounds, you feel really good. And you set a PR.
Yeah.
That being said, what still could be going down is bar speed. And if you wanted to like do a powerlifting meet, you'd want that to come up before you tested the squat because you'd squat more. But that's an interesting idea that if you test your speed, you can know how well you're responding to all this training. Because you do have to do the longer stuff occasionally, but I would keep an eye on that.
What I find is like a 2-to-1 ratio of training versus testing, too, or maybe training versus practice. A lot of people call like some of these workouts testing. I'm not sure it's fair to call like every long Metcon. I know OPT kind of started that. This is testing, this is training, and almost anytime any of those OPT guys are doing the like a typical WOD, they all call it testing. And I almost see it more. It's not always testing. Sometimes it's just practice. Practicing for what you're going to encounter at the open or regionals or something like that. So
feeling the pain.
It's still a training session. You're still training, but I like the 2-to-1 ratio of like working on that speed and really focusing on an aspect. We're either working on anaerobic threshold or we're working on getting stronger, faster, strength endurance, something like that. We're focused on an aspect of training or a skill or something like that, and then having that practice. So like for the endurance athletes, I'll have them. I keep on making their running shorter and shorter because they're slow. So like they're 400. I put a CrossFit on the track and they'll run 400 meters in 60 seconds. And I throw a guy out there that runs marathons and it takes him a minute and a half. And I'm like, there's something wrong here. And so some of the endurance guys, they get a little antsy. And I actually had one guy email me and he goes, can I can do more endurance training. Like he thinks that I'm like keeping his endurance training low for some other reason. But the reality is low.
That's when you hit reply.
He's doing 100.
And you copy his mom on the email and say, who's the fucking coach here? Huh? I'm the coach.
Well, I think that he thinks I think he doesn't have the time. But the reason I'm having running, 8 100s versus running 5Ks, it has nothing to do with what I think he can do. It has everything to do with like your 100s are still really slow. when you get those fast. So I want you to get fast first, then we'll work on the endurance. But so like the 2-to-1 ratio, where that comes in is he's running, really short intervals twice a week, and then on the weekend, that's when he goes for practice.
So how do I put this delicately? You run like a fat 5th grader. So if you want to not suck terribly, we have to fix that.
Yeah. And truth be told, like we don't have like an endurance athlete that I'm happy with their speed yet. Like when, they run, if I have them run a mile, I'm like, man, that's a really good time. But then I have them run 400. I'm like, man, I don't feel like there's a lot of correlation there. It's like they're almost running slower when they run 400.
You want to see something that's basically just embarrassing.
Maybe I'm a bad coach.
Have an endurance athlete do a vertical jump. It's embarrassing to watch. And that's coming from a guy who has one of the worst vertical jumps, around for power athletes. Man, I can't jump with this shit. But when I jump, I can put endurance athletes to shame. We had guys in our lab one time testing the vertical jump. We take muscle bumps and everything. They're all very slow twitch. We talked about on a previous episode of Barbell Shrugged. But if you could, these guys would get like 3 inches off the ground during a vertical jump. Like they go, eh.
It looks like they're faking it.
Okay, well, you kind of practiced it. Now jump for real. They go, no, that was the thing. It's a terrible way to train.
So my anatomy professor was in college, just like that 6 inches max.
Yeah, it's like I'm fat and I can jump 5 times higher than you. Like this is not right.
Yeah, you're 300 pounds, but you could squat 3 times body weight. If you can squat 3 times body weight, you can jump.
My best vertical jump was when I was at my fattest. When I was like 3'7", I could jump on top of that table.
Oh yeah, I remember. Yeah, like 50 inches.
Yeah, I was not bad for being a big fatty, but
not a 50-inch vertical, but getting onto a 50-inch box.
Yeah, I could do all that kind of stuff. I just and that's when I was benching, like speed benching 500 pounds and doing speed pulls with. I did the best. I think one of the proudest I ever did. I did a snatch grip deadlift off a deficit with 600 pounds.
Oh,
like I stood on 3 or 4 of the mats. And I grabbed the bar snatch grip and I somehow lifted that. So that was my prime. The only thing is I was just terribly fat. My shake of choice was the maltodextrin mixed with like pureed with banana and heavy cream and like grape jelly and peanut butter and honey. Like the greatest shake ever. Like 3,000 calories.
Yeah, if you're out there looking to gain weight, pay attention.
I talked to
let me repeat that. If you put in your blender, you don't have to do the maltodextrin thing. It's like I got it off a Beer Supply website. Yeah. That will make you really fat quick. Be careful. That's our disclaimer. It's just sugar. But if you have a shake, here's the weight gain shake. So you have your blender, pour in a little half and half of heavy cream, fill the rest up. You can also do coconut milk, fill the rest up with like vitamin D milk. Add in like a big squeeze of honey, like 2 bananas. Like a big honking, like third of the container of peanut butter, 2 or 3 scoops of protein powder, blend that up, and you're going to have a great time. That is a milkshake.
Sounds delicious.
Yeah, it's ridiculously good.
Sounds good.
Now, people say, well, I can't gain weight. I've tried. Hokum. Hokum. You need to eat more. And liquid is the path to your salvation. Sounds like a time for a break, by the way.
You don't decide the breaks here, I do.
Who's the goddamn host of this show?
Yeah, we'll take a break. All right. TTP.
We're breaking.
You screwed it up. No.
And break. And
break.
Break.
Now.
We're back in a rhythm with the show.
Mike Bledsoe here with Technique Wad. We're going to go over a few different ways to train you how to better get underneath the bar. All 3 of these things are going to be start with a bar on the back of your shoulders here, and we're going to press underneath the bar essentially. So the first one is going to be a drop snatch. And all these are going to be very similar. So you can put your hands in the same place that you're going to snatch at. Your feet are at your pulling, in the pulling position. What you're going to do is, this is 100% drive down. And this is great for warm-ups. I wouldn't really try to max out with a weight on this. What you're going to do is you're basically going to shift your feet from pulling position to squatting position and then drive down quickly, okay? The purpose of this drill is to work on speed under the bar, okay? So I'm here, there. Also teaching you to lock your shoulders out quickly. All right, next one is going to be snatch balance. So that first one's a drop snatch. So snatch balance, your feet are going to start in the pulling position again. you're gonna give a little bit of a drive there, just enough to get the bar off your shoulders. You'll be able to do more weight with this, closer. The weight for this, you should be able to do close to what you snatch, maybe more. There's a little bit of a drive, just a little pop. And again, this is for training speed under the bar, but training for speed under the bar with some weight. And the last one is the heaving snatch balance. And this is gonna teach you just to get yourself underneath heavy weight. So speed is not a huge component here. This is more about maximizing the load. So your feet will not be starting in the pulling position this time. You're gonna start them closer to where you squat, so squat position. You're gonna get a big heave, like a push press. Big heave, and you're gonna drive underneath, okay? The goal here is to get a lot of weight overhead. So this would be just short of a push press, then an overhead squat, okay? So you are gonna heave up with everything you have, and then get underneath, okay? So those are 3 ways that are all slightly different on teaching you how to get under the bar faster or better. The first 2 are gonna be more about teaching you timing and speed. And the last one's more about just being able to handle a bigger load while in the overhead squat position. Later, guys.
Coffee, tequila, barbells. Coffee, tequila, barbells. That's all you need. You are like, this is like 60, this is just like 60 minutes. I think you're gonna learn how to apply some very simple, powerful concepts to your everyday training and kickstart what you do in the gym and get about the business of being stronger than you ever thought you could be. You're gonna be so strong, your mom's gonna be like, what's happening to you? Who are you hanging out with? Your friends are bald with goatees. If you want to be strong, you don't have to shave your head. It helps, but you don't have to. Being as strong as possible is the coolest thing I can imagine.
Reckoning time. All right, welcome back. Just want to give a shout out to South Lake Union CrossFit, or CrossFit South Lake Union. They sent us this sweet t-shirt.
Pretty awesome t-shirts.
With a cool back on it.
Yeah, the back is the best part.
There you go. Give it a turn.
Hashtag hella buff.
Hella buff.
So everyone on Twitter, when you see this show, I want everyone to use that hashtag. We'll just tag Barbell Shrugged, at Barbell Shrugged, and then hashtag hella buff. And then we'll have a interesting discussion about this show. Yeah.
I'll drop in there next time I'm back in Washington. They're from Seattle, right?
Seattle. Yeah. Very cool.
Hey, all right. Super cool.
All right, so we talked the first half a lot about a lot of BS, since we're good at that. And we're going to try to get a little bit more focus and talk about how to do some of the things we were talking about. And I want to talk, what do we want to cover first? For the CrossFitter?
Yeah, we're going to try and break it down. Like, I feel like on the first half, it was kind of jumbled. Like we were talking about different goals without really stating the goal we were talking about. We might have been talking about a strength athlete trying to maintain or maximize strength versus sometimes I was making a reference, but in my head I was talking about for CrossFitters, or in my head I was talking about for endurance athletes. So we're gonna break that down, try to make it a little more specific on the second half, and add some how-to for those 3 different categories of people. So if you're an endurance athlete, you know, what do people classically do when they're training for endurance sports versus what do you think they should be doing? You know, and what's a good training program in modern day? You know, what does their conditioning look like? What does their strength training look like? So for you program for endurance athletes, someone who's trying to run a marathon or trying to improve their marathon time. How do you structure their conditioning and how do you structure their strength training, and what should they not be doing?
For the endurance athletes, it's real interesting, especially if they've been an endurance athlete before they come in. A lot of times they're pretty weak and slow, and the thing that we can improve for them the most is their strength and speed. And strength and speed go hand in hand. Their strength training is probably, I mean, and if this is an ideal situation, I'm going to have them lifting 4 or 5 days a week. You know, they'll be squatting 2 or 3 days of the week. They'll be working on power cleans and stuff like that. So they'll be working on some speed strength as well. For the strength training, it's not going to be. I don't do a lot of like anaerobic threshold type training in the gym, like CrossFit normally does. Like I hold off on like their endurance training mostly for running. They do they do a lot of strength training, and they do a lot of muscular endurance and strength endurance in the gym. And then most of their aerobic capacity and their anaerobic threshold training is going to be sport specific, which is running.
So you don't Metcon them a whole lot. You do mostly strength work, and then all of their conditioning for the most part is running and speed work.
They do
400s and stuff.
I wouldn't say they don't do Metcons. The Metcons they do are high skill.
What does that mean?
The limiter is going to be their muscular endurance, not their like systemic, acidosis or anything like that. They're not going to be like on the floor, I can't breathe. There's two different types of Metcons almost. Like the one you're like, I just can't do any more pull-ups anymore. I can't do any more squats. I've got a big burn in these muscles and I just can't fire anymore. And then there's like Fran, where you have like Fran lung afterwards. You can get up and you just can't hardly breathe.
That's horrible.
So for the endurance guys, actually don't have them do as much of that stuff. They're doing more muscular endurance stuff. So they do strength and muscular endurance and strength endurance stuff in the gym. And they're doing Metcons and they're breathing hard, but they're not getting pushed to the limit. I want to see them push to the limit on the track normally. So twice a week, relatively short intervals where they're really working on speed. And the reason it's twofold there is like we can really work on their sport specific conditioning there where they are pushing their anaerobic threshold on the track. Running twice a week, they're pushing their anaerobic threshold. And in addition to that, they're getting positive adaptations for running because they're running as fast as they possibly can. So a lot of the that way they do a lot more endurance training, a lot of slow stuff. Yeah, they could be eating into their speed a little bit. And then the third training session, so they only run 3 days a week. Their third training session for running, that's when they're going to practice. So I was talking about earlier, you have training sessions versus practice, and I like a 2-to-1 ratio, especially for the endurance guys. And so they train twice a week on running, which is kind of like practice, but then they actually go, if they're training for a 50-mile race, they may go run 20. Their practice is running 20 miles on the trails that weekend. Or something like that.
And how often is that? Is that like once a week? Like the
long run?
Yeah,
just once a week.
Just once a week.
So, and sometimes their long run is not long. So I kind of schedule those in a way where once a month they'll have like the long run, something that's like 15 miles or longer. A lot of times their long run is like 5 miles, 10 miles, 5K. And every once in a while, like if we're having like an unloading week, then I'll just have them run like a mile. But I tell them, go balls out and run as hard as you possibly can.
So for the endurance athlete that's been training long, slow distance for a decade or more and has had a lot of success for it, if that person's listening right now, we're not suggesting that only running long distances doesn't work at all, because a lot of people have had a lot of success with that type of training, and we're not saying it doesn't work, but what we are saying is that we think this model of training strength and training intervals and training speed can get you a very similar benefit, if not a better one, and your training volume is down, so your injury rate will probably go down too.
Yeah, wear and tear on the running joints is probably going to be decreased.
There's two of those things. Is one is volume. Too much volume in one specific thing is going to create injuries or potential for injuries, and then the other thing there too is we focus a lot on movement efficiency. We try to teach people to run more efficiently. Another thing too, if you're doing some of this other stuff, then you're going to be training muscles that support that more efficient movement. So a lot of times people they may be they run a certain way, or say they have a weak like glute medius or something like that, and their knees are doing something funny when they run, so they go buy a shoe to try and fix the problem instead of like actually getting stronger, fixing the way they move, and changing their gait. So there's two ways you can do that. One is get certain muscle groups stronger, and then the other thing is to just do some drills to improve efficiency.
Yeah, it's common that endurance guys come in and they have huge mobility limitations and huge strength imbalances, and then they'll come in and say something like, "I'm an overpronator," which basically means, like when you squat, your feet point out and your knees dive in. Like people do that when they run too, and in the running world, they call that being an overpronator, because when your foot flattens out like that, that's pronation. And so it's like a term that a lot of runners are familiar with. And if you're an overpronator, usually that means that you probably have ankle mobility issues, or like you were saying, your glute medius, one of the muscles on kind of the side of your hip that helps externally rotate your leg. And when you externally rotate your leg, it's kind of like pushing your knees out when you squat. And that brings the arch back in your foot, which takes you out of pronation. So if you can make that muscle stronger by doing single leg work and some stability type drills that we're going to do technique wads on very soon, if you can do those things, then you're less likely to overpronate. And if you're not overpronating, then you're less likely to get ACL and medial meniscus problems in your knees. You're less likely to get patellofemoral pain. You're just less likely to have achy knees overall.
You're welcome, running world.
But just running. Yeah, but just running and trying to improve your running technique isn't going to fix that. You have to improve your mobility and those strength imbalances, and then it'll kind of resolve on its own.
Man, I get so angry sometimes. People are like, I bought this shoe because they told me to fix my problem. I'm like, man, it's just going to make it worse. It's like you have atrophy of a muscle, and it could be even just the muscles in your foot and ankle and stuff like that. It's like, and now you're going to make it even worse. You're just going to
like some stupid shoe that's going to destroy your alignment.
They just progressively get worse and worse. I have to get like crazier and crazier insoles and crazier and crazier running shoes.
It's great for the insole industry, dummy.
Yeah, there's a lot of running shoe stores that make a lot of money off of people who just don't train properly.
Yeah.
That's the norm, really.
It's a great business model.
Yeah, if you don't have the mobility for it, there's no orthotic or accessory thing that you can buy that's going to fix it. The example that I've been using lately that I think's been helping people is if I say to put your foot behind your head, and you just don't have the mobility for it, there's nothing you can do to improve your movement efficiency or your technique, because you just can't do it.
There's no verbal cue or drill or
yeah. I can't tell you to pull hard or elbows up. Like, there's nothing you can do about it because you just don't have the range of motion to do it correctly. And that's the exact same thing. If you don't have the ankle mobility to push your knee over your toe without having your knee dive in, then there's no running cue or squatting cue or push your knees out or whatever that I can tell you to do to fix your mechanics and to make you less likely to get injured. You just have to improve your mobility. So buying an orthotic is oftentimes for people a huge waste of money.
Yeah.
You got to improve your technique by
May God
making
have mercy on your soul.
By making it possible to go through that range of motion before you expect to do it a lot.
The worst part is they think that's the answer to the problem. They're like, oh, I fixed my problem. I'm like, no, you didn't fix it. And then so they think they fixed the problem, so they don't pursue, the solution any further. They're like, oh, this is the solution, period. And then it gets worse. So it's frustrating as a coach sometimes.
Yeah.
So I mean, I've walked into some CrossFit gyms and talked to some coaches, and they're like, oh, we don't really bother with telling them to change their shoe, if they want to do that eventually. I'm like, man, it's like day 2. I'm like, getting some innovates or something that's minimal, like let's try to promote natural movement here. That's the best thing people can do.
Yeah. Here, let's switch gears for a minute. We were talking about primarily endurance athletes.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go 180 and talk about strength athletes. I mentioned earlier about the cross-country skiers and how lifting weights and doing an 8-week program improved their performance. And it's the total opposite for high-level powerlifters. If I took a high-level powerlifter and I gave him an endurance program for 8 weeks, he wouldn't improve his performance. It would probably fall off significantly. And I have a study to show that one. I feel like, especially in the powerlifting community, that's like common knowledge. So for those guys, what kind of endurance training should they do, if any at all?
I think there was always a big school of thought, especially in the old school, like you just didn't ever. Like one of the greatest stories I ever heard was Mike Stone talking about a weightlifter who, like the hotel for the meet was across, or the venue for the meet was across from his hotel, and he refused to walk across the street to the venue. He wanted to be carried over there because the walking would potentially interfere with his training. So there's an extreme attitude of like any endurance training at all will sacrifice the squatting, will sacrifice my ability to perform on a platform. So I'm not going to do anything like that. And I actually was always of the opinion that even though I'm going to be big, and I was always kind of aware that I was not very fit, but I did put a pretty big importance on like 3 to 4 sessions a week of sort of powerlifting specific or powerlifting relevant conditioning activities. Like one thing I did religiously during my best years of powerlifting was do a lot of sled dragging. So that's not terribly challenging for a lot of CrossFitters. But, you'd load up a couple 100 pounds of sled and drag it for 20, 30, 45 minutes. You just walk across the field or down the street, turn around, walk back, and you get a lot of sort of deadlift or squat specific conditioning. That, in my opinion, was always that if I can be fit enough, like if I can get better at pulling a sled, then I'm probably gonna be able to do more sets on deadlifts or squats with better form without getting as fatigued. When I put the work in there, I will get more efficient work when I'm doing my strength training. That's always how I viewed it. So people say, why would you worry about doing like tricep extensions for like with a band for 100 reps? That's not gonna make you stronger. Why would you do 5 sets of 10 glute ham raises when you could just deadlift more? Well, yeah, I mean, that's on its own, that doesn't necessarily make you stronger, but those things prepare the parts of your body and make those joints and those range of motion more fit. So when you do a lot of heavy deadlift training, squat training, push training, you're more prepared to do more high quality work.
Yeah, make you more robust.
Yeah, and I never want to be, because there's a lot of powerlifters who they'll do like they'll pull a deadlift like with sub max 70%, get a lot of breath and sit down for 5 minutes and do another set. I never saw the point in being that guy. Or a weightlifter who does the snatch, they sit down and then in classic Pocket Hercules, Naeem Sulaiman style, like take a shot of whiskey and smoke a cigarette, then do another set of squats. It's cool, it's great, but you want to be more well-rounded. You could, I think a lot of lifters get more out of having this baseline of fitness so you're prepared. That's one thing Louis always said correctly, is that you have to be prepared to train. You can't just like expect to go into the gym and squat and press and and deadlift heavy, and if you're not prepared for that activity, if those muscles aren't fit, like if you can try to deadlift all you want, but if you can't do 5 strict glute ham raises, that's probably evidence that some parts of your body aren't really as fit as they could be.
I do think people take it too far, like you were saying, where they don't do any endurance training at all because they're worried about losing strength.
That's a great lesson of CrossFit, is that you can do a hell of a lot of stuff actually and never have your strength really affected.
Because they're doing anaerobic type endurance training. They're not doing long, slow duration 5-6 days a week. If you run 20 miles 6 days a week, that probably is going to affect your strength. If you do a 20-minute Metcon 3 times a week just because you're trying to like maintain some fitness while you get as strong as possible, you're not going to lose strength.
No. There's no excuse for being a lazy shit.
You're just pushing the prow at the end of your training. You're going to maintain all your strength.
The great thing about the Prowler is you could every day of the week you could push the Prowler and never get sore, never get unduly tired from doing that, and you can keep a really great base level of fitness, because that thing will beat you to shit. But for as far as endurance goes, but the next day you can squat and deadlift fine. You have because there's no big muscle.
Yeah. I especially like the Prowler. Especially like the Prowler for powerlifters and weightlifters, because oftentimes that's like the only single leg work they get. Yeah, they don't do much in the way of lunging and step ups and whatnot, but pushing the Prowler is pretty much single leg work.
And the same with dragging a sled. So you're only contracting, so you're not lengthening under a load. You take a step, you move the weight, and you take another step. So you're getting a different kind of stimulus on one leg at a time. You're training a lot of the muscles that you probably otherwise wouldn't train that way. It's not going to take anything away from your squatting and deadlifting and everything else, and you get better at powerlifting because of it.
I think also one of the things I benefited great from when I started CrossFitting and then playing around with training since then is my concern when I started when I went from weightlifting to CrossFit, I thought my strength would go down.
It's the opposite of the CrossFitter who thinks if I focused on strength, my endurance will go down. It's that central question that we started off the show.
What was interesting is I think I lacked a lot of speed training when I was weightlifting. I did a lot of high force stuff and not a lot of I didn't do a lot of box jumps and stuff like that. And I think doing CrossFit for a while, and then actually I ended up getting stronger, and I was kind of confused because I saw CrossFit as endurance training, and it is kind of the in between. It's not long, slow distance. It is a lot of it's interval training. And I've noticed too is if I do 2-minute intervals as a weightlifter, if I'm doing 2-minute intervals, and I actually see a really big benefit out of that. And I think there's a few reasons why. And one is getting that high speed training that you're not going to get when you're holding a barbell probably.
Unless you're specifically focusing on really fast motion with a barbell.
Right.
You're intentionally keeping the weight down and trying every rep.
Your hips are moving faster when you're doing a box jump than when you're snatching anything. Yeah. Even if it's just a little bit faster. And then I think there's just I think people Like I know a lot of weightlifting coaches are like, yeah, do some conditioning, but no squats in your conditioning. And I think that they're afraid that you're going to cause some like muscular damage there, and all your focus should be on squatting heavier weights and doing 50 air squats for time is going to be not beneficial. I actually find the opposite to be true. What I found personally with conditioning is if you keep it light, then you're okay. But if you try to do 50 reps at 70% of your 1 rep max, then you might be training to be slow.
I would say if you're any kind of athlete, and if you do a little WOD where you have to do 50 bodyweight squats as quick as possible, and that destroys you for your workout the next day, you're out of shape terribly. And I'm not in good particular shape. I could do 100 squats, and 5 minutes later, I don't feel like I've done anything.
You're talking about air squats.
Anybody should be able to do that. That's what I'm talking about. If you're long and slow CrossFitter, or you're super short duration, high power weightlifter, if you can't do 50 to 100 bodyweight squats and be completely recovered the next day or an hour later, if that affects you that pronounced, you have to up your sort of baseline preparedness for lifting.
There's something to be said for just general physical preparedness.
Yeah. That's the great thing about CrossFit is that it's a good idea to have this sort of holistic baseline ability. Like, there's a host of very fundamental things like dips or maybe a handstand or the ability to jump, the ability to do sprints and runs. I mean, even like the best weightlifters of all time always made time for like this play component, like go out and run a little bit, go do a little hiking. That always has to be. You have to have this foundation, because if you just do one thing intensely, it's like you get on that road and you will go towards an end that is not optimal. You can't just focus on one thing. There has to be some level of balance in all things you do. So if you're a pal out there who can't walk across the street without getting tired, there's no way you're training as hard as you could be. I mean, how do you do 8 sets of 3 deadlifts with 70% of your max and pull as fast as possible each time? I mean, you're leaving so much potential on the platform by just being out of shape and fucking lazy.
Now, for the powerlifters, do you avoid the long metcons and avoid the long training so you don't lose mass? Right. So I think the understanding, the common understanding that I see is, as I was bigger, I could deadlift 400 pounds. Now that I lost some weight, I could only get 315. Is that?
I don't think it has so much to do with like losing weight. We were talking earlier about like speed, and if you're doing conditioning long enough, if you're doing a metcon that lasts 20 minutes, the reps you're doing 20 minutes into it are a lot slower than the ones you're doing at the beginning. And for strength athletes, I like them to be able to keep moving quickly. So if they start getting into movements where they're grinding, it's no bueno, if they're a strength athlete, because why would you want to train that muscle to move slowly? And so there's a nervous system thing going on there too.
If you're a lifter, every movement that's pretty close to what you train and compete in. Like if you're a powerlifter, doing tons and tons of reps in a deadlift for conditioning may be disastrous, but lots and lots of reps with a kettlebell swing should not affect you that much. If your lower back and hips and legs and arms have a baseline fitness, you should be able to do that, no problem. But to do 5 sets of 20 in the deadlift would probably be the stupidest thing you can decide to do. I think, because that's going to make your deadlift form shitty, and it's going to make you slow, and it's going to irritate the hell out of your lower back. But swinging a 50-pound kettlebell for a lot of reps is more appropriate. It's like if you're a weightlifter doing grace 3 times a week or whatever, it's probably not the smartest thing if you're trying to refine your snatch technique. Your snatch will get really shitty. It's maybe appropriate for a CrossFitter who will be tested in that thing. But if you're competing in a pure lift, then you need to keep that space a little bit sacred. And then your endurance training can be things that are supplemental, that look quasi like it, but aren't going to interfere with those lifts.
The other thing too is I don't think anyone who's pursuing fitness for the sake of health, doing like a metcon longer than 10 minutes is probably not necessary. And so if you're a strength athlete, you fall into that like doing conditioning for health and for general physical preparedness, and doing more than a 10-minute session is probably counterproductive. The people who do belong in the category of doing conditioning longer than 10 minutes in a day are people who are competing in CrossFit or are endurance athletes.
Have you talked about the optimal approach for CrossFit now? We talked about long and slow and short and quick. But the CrossFit is an interesting, different approach.
Interesting animal. So
Like I said, like,
still learning all the time.
Things that are cardinal sins in powerlifting and weightlifting and maybe even strongman are essential in CrossFit.
Yeah, I had a struggle for a while because I understood weightlifting to this really large degree, and compared to CrossFit training and a lot of this like muscular endurance type training and all this work capacity stuff. And I approached it from a weightlifting coach's perspective, and that's definitely had to change.
What comes
I'm not all
assumptions, right?
Yeah, I came into it thinking we always have to. If you're moving slow, you should stop. And that's just not the case with CrossFit. You're training CrossFitters, man. There's going to be a lot of times where you're grinding.
There's going to be some ugly reps.
There's going to be ugly reps. There's going to be times you're grinding. You shouldn't do that year round. There should definitely be periods of time where you don't have slow reps and you are focusing on speed and all that kind of stuff. And then other parts of the year, you're going to be doing more volume, and it's going to be you're going to be really, really sore and beat up a whole lot. I like to run in short cycles, 4 weeks at a time. At the beginning of the cycle, everyone's moving really fast. First, second week, they're moving really fast. The rep schemes are shorter. We get into the third week, they get pretty long. Mm-hmm. People are like feeling beat up. They hate life. And then, we go into the fourth week, we cut volume in half, and then they start feeling fast again, and we roll into the next cycle.
Crazy how that happens.
Yeah. So, we kind of keep going up, trying to overreach a little bit. Third week of training, about halfway through the third week of training, most of the athletes are going, I feel like shit. I'm like, okay, good. And they're like, you're crazy. They're like,
that's an essential part of the thing. Sometimes you have to feel really
bad.
bad.
And then it's like the middle of the next week of the unloading week, they're like, I feel amazing.
Yeah.
Like,
and that's when you perform. That's when you do really well.
Yeah.
You can't have the one without the other. You're not going to feel great all year long. If you're pursuing just fitness, that's fine. But if you're really pushing endurance or powerlifting or CrossFit, trying to be as best as possible, sometimes you're going to feel terrible. You're going to wake up, and it's going to take you 45 minutes to actually be able to bend your knees and ankles sometimes when the training gets really tough. Then other times you're focusing on speed and recovery, and the world is going to be a glorious, warm, inviting place.
Yeah, I'm coaching this new athlete. She text messaged me yesterday and goes, everything but my belly button. It hurts. Yeah. I was like, good. We'll have to find some way to train that. No.
Yeah. Belly button.
It's like, no, leave the belly button alone.
Now, Mike, how does building strength improve your CrossFit abilities, improve your Metcon abilities?
I think Doug has he states it really well. I'll let you go.
Doug, that's your cue.
Yeah.
Well, I continue to cite that same study where they were showing that until something's below, I think it was 40% of your max, training for muscular endurance with something that's not less than 40% of your max doesn't really help you improve your endurance at that activity. So the example that I usually use with that is the high school bench press example, where if you go to any high school in America, there's always the football team, and they're trying to see who can rep out 135 the most times. I've seen that a bunch of times growing up. And the kids that always win are the kids that are the strongest. The kids that have the best endurance with 135 pounds are the kids that can bench 300 pounds. And the guy that benches 155, he's pushing around 85% of his max, and it doesn't matter how much endurance he has with 135 pounds. He's just not strong enough to do 30 reps with that weight. He can only do 3 because it's such a high percentage of his max. So getting stronger for CrossFit is important because oftentimes you're going to have 345 for reps on a deadlift. And if you only deadlift 345, you're going to do it for a single. And if you deadlift 550, like Chris was saying, then you can do it for 30 reps and then go on to the next thing.
You shift your baseline so far over that now things that used to be hard are no longer that difficult.
Yeah.
There's always that balance. Like, there is probably a point where you're strong enough. I mean, if you get to where you're deadlifting 550 for CrossFit and you can clean, now I guess the standard is you better be able to clean 315.
Yeah.
Minimum.
Yeah, that's actually the more impressive part of modern CrossFit. But should you spend time being able to deadlift 600? Mm-hmm. Well, that would be cool if it didn't take a lot of extra work. But if you put so much focus on the deadlift where you did 1 or 2 less Metcons here and there, then pretty soon now the balance is going to shift, and now you're putting too much focus on the strength. But yeah, you got to be at a certain level to be able to do things efficiently. Like if you can clean and jerk 100 kilos, you're not going to win any of these CrossFit competitions. Do you have to be able to clean and jerk 200 kilos? No, that'd be really cool. But now you're a weightlifter. You're not going to be able to do, that triathlon.
You probably focus too much on one aspect of training.
Yeah, I mean, so it's common sense. Like, you have to prioritize what you need to improve, and then once you hit that goal, that's sort of enough.
And David, you were talking earlier about you've gotten stronger more recently, and you feel like it's really improved your conditioning.
Yeah, and it kind of reverts back to a point that I heard you make one time. I just recently did a garage games competition, and I feel that I was more efficient, a lot faster because I was stronger. And in my past 3 years of CrossFit, I was lifting maybe once, twice a week, but I was stuck on these like volume high, like load the board up with a bunch of workout and Metcon for 2 hours, and we're strong, And now that I've really focused on weightlifting, I think that the cardio just comes second nature.
You came to Faction when? Was it the spring? You started coaching, and then you kind of jumped on more strength training.
Right.
Shortly thereafter. Is it how recent is that? The strength training?
Strength training probably about the past year.
Yeah.
Something like that. Yeah.
So your strength training, you notice a big difference.
Oh yeah, definitely.
I think it has even less to do with the fact that you're actually. Let's forget about like physiology. Everything. Let's think about like the way we perceive a workout or a competition. Like if you take your deadlift from 350 to 450, and you're at a competition, and you got to swing a kettlebell 100 times, where it makes the difference is you walk up to the kettlebell, you grab it, pick it up, and in that instant you're going to crush the workout. Versus picking it up and go, oh Jesus Christ, this is heavy. Like having the confidence of being strong automatically puts you ahead of people who are approaching a heavy object knowing that they're not strong enough to do it, and this is going to be terrible.
Yeah.
But having that solid baseline fitness, when you pick up, the 60 kilo snatch for reps, when you can snatch, the 100 or whatever, you have immediate confidence to do well at that competition.
Right.
Versus knowing that you're not as strong, picking up, and everybody's had that feeling when you pick up the bar, it's like, oh, this is a little heavier than I thought. You're already lost. You're already going to lose. And that moment, the confidence is gone. You'll stand a chance. But being strong already gets you off the gate faster.
Nice.
I definitely agree.
Good end.
Yeah, good way to end the episode.
Awesome.
Philosophizing.
All right, Doug. We got to run. So, Doug, quick.
We're running out of time.
What are you going to promote?
Talked about having mobility issues earlier, and if you just don't have the mobility to go through a certain movement, then there's no chance of you having good technique on that movement. So if you want to find out where you have restrictions for your mobility and your ankles, your hips, your shoulders, your upper back, and maximum mobility, in the Fitter Shop has the tools there to show you exactly where you have those limitations, and it shows you exactly how to fix them. So if you want to check that out, it's in the Fitter Shop. Chris?
Yeah. Well, I have a blog.
What's it called?
No, check out thechrismooreblog.com. There's some fun stuff there. Also, I got to put more effort on my Twitter. Follow me on the Twitters at ChrisMooreXL, because I'm big. There's lots of Chris Moores, but not so many that are this big. I want some more followers. We can start a conversation there. And then, to Doug's point, if you go on fitter.tv, you'll see my little seminar on building strength simply. Simple Strength's the name. I think the purpose of that, in an environment where there's lots of information, there's all these things you could be doing, I set out to sort of explain why it is you should pursue certain things and when you should do that. So I think if you have questions about your strength training and how to get the most out of your body in a simple, straightforward way, and you want to really feel comfortable in your training and you want to have an understanding of that, I think that's the product for you.
Got anything to plug, David?
Yeah, New Year's resolutions. If you want to get in shape, our Faction Fundamentals starts the 7th of this month or this next month. Mm-hmm. We still got the early bird special going on, so I think you've got a day or two to do that.
So it'll be too late by the time this posts.
Oh, really?
Sorry, guys.
Yeah, sure.
That's right. I won't post for a few days.
Damn it!
But Faction
you can still come though.
Yeah, definitely. We'll get you in shape.
Yep, go to factionsc.com if you're in Memphis and you want to check out the fundamentals course. We have 2 weeks for free for everybody. David coaches in the mornings.
And I'll point out to everybody, it's already January, right? May, June, right around the corner. If you want to look sexy and trim, get in the gym now. I'm working on my bikini body already.
All right, what do you got, Mike?
Last thing, check out our remote coaching. Both Matt Baird and myself offer remote coaching. Maybe I'll be able to convince Chris and Doug to jump on it. If you have any questions about it, feel free just click the contact us button on the website at fitter.tv and send us a message. Also, go to fitter.tv and sign up for our newsletter. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Cheers. Chris, the producer.
Oh, my God.
No, I can't tell.
See, I feel like the latter half of that show is way better.
Is that better? The second
That
half?
happens a lot, though.
That was focused.
It's like the second half of the show usually always.
CTP's not saying anything yet. He's not saying anything.
What was the question?
How was the second part? Better?